Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today it's just going to be me. I'm going to be reading while playing. I'm going to be reading some creepypastas, and I was planning on afterwards talking about the podcast, like my opinions so far, and stuff like that. And what I was going also to do today, the reason why I'm doing one by myself today, not because I don't have any guests lined up, I have plenty of guests lined up. It's more, I just want to try out something new and try something different, and I want each episode to kind of be different and interesting because I want to test stuff out. So, like, the first two were just me and a guest, and then the third one was three people. So this one, I want to try it just by myself. Let's see how this goes. So, let's get into it. I'm going to be reading creepypastas from... Oh, do I not have... I think it's just the creepypasta wiki. Let me just double check. Yeah, creepypastawiki.com. And I'm going to read a couple of them. We'll see how far we get with that today. So I'm just going to get comfortable. If you hear flipping in the background, it's me flipping the pages of my notes. And also, if you hear a lot of people talking in the background, I apologize as well. I'm in the school and people are very loud for some odd reason today. Anyways, let's get into this. So the first one I'm going to be reading is The Arrowhead by Jason Slowinski. Slowinski. That's a word. Alright. Think of all the faces you've seen in your lifetime. The brain memorizes these faces, shapes, eyes, other features, down to the smallest detail. We remember some faces we recognize in dreams. For me, in a nightmare. I have a daily routine of filling up my Keurig, taking my medium roast coffee upstairs into my into my home music studio, and sitting at my computer. I carefully slip my Folgers with two hands as I listen to my favorite bands. I await a spark of sudden inspiration. Today was an off day for me. A light blanket of snow on the ground under an overcast sky, gloomy and cold. My fingers seemed to forget how to play chords on my guitar. I stared blankly out the window during a short break. My girlfriend and I moved into this newly renovated home about 4 months ago. It is a quiet neighborhood. We rarely see our surrounding neighbors. She works at the local coffee shop while I make a living as a freelance jingle writer. Life is good. I have the girl of my dreams, a warm home, my cats, my dog, Sabbath. Our lives together aren't exciting, but they are lovely and comfortable. We sit on our cheap sectional together watching the latest thrillers released on Netflix as a nightly routine. As we sit on the couch, she turns to me and asks, "Why were you breathing so heavily in your sleep last night?" "I'm not sure. Next time wake me up," I replied. I have had trouble sleeping since we moved in. No reason, I just wake up at odd hours of the night. I don't think anything of it. Being that we are in an unfamiliar house, she takes my hand and turns back to the TV with an unsettling look on her face. Sorry. "What's wrong?" I ask. She hesitates for a moment. "Is everything okay?" I inquired. "There's just something," she stuttered. I put my arm around her in a comforting manner. "Baby, seriously, you can tell me," I calmly stated. "I just think I saw," she struggled to say. "What did you see?" I persisted. "I think I saw someone walking up the stairs out of the corner of my eye last night," she stated. I scratched my head, feeling puzzled for a minute, before I let out an obnoxious laugh. "It's not funny," she exclaimed. I said I'm sorry, and that she could continue with her story, and she said never mind, and we continued our nightly thriller binge. The next morning, I opened my eyes to see her staring back at mine with horror. her eyes filled with blood-red webs of inflamed capillaries. She wrapped in a thick blanket and had condensation lightly seeping from her breath. I jumped up and yelled, "What's going on?" in excitement. I saw it. I saw him. She tripped over her words. I couldn't find the words to reply. The room was ice cold. I felt like a grocery store cooler. I jumped up, threw on my ripped Levi's, and slowly exited the room. I grabbed my old Smith & Wesson 12-gauge shotgun I inherited from my great-grandfather and pumped a double-aught buckshot into the chamber. I tactically investigated each room with my finger on the trigger. Being early morning, each room was dimly lit, sunshine peeking through the blinds, my heart beating on a fast-paced tempo. I cleared the ground floor and made my way upstairs. I arrived at the closed door of my home studio. I carefully placed my hand on the doorknob, making sure not to make a sound. Suddenly I hear a crash from the other side of the door. I kick the door open and sweep the room with the sights of my gun. There was no one there. I figured the noise was our little orange cat, the youngest of the three, who loved to make trouble around the house. "Get it together, Jay," I whispered to myself. I laughed to myself and made my way downstairs. "Lori," I yelled. "Don't do that to me," I said while laughing. I put the gun away and walked to the thermostat. I read 72 degrees. "This thing must be broken," I said. I called our landlord to have someone fix whatever was wrong with the heat. He was able to get a repairman over at around 10:30 a.m. Lori didn't say much for the rest of the day and seemed to stick close by. I finally turned to her and brushed her hair aside from behind her ear. "It's a new house, sweetheart. There's nothing to be afraid of, especially ghosts," I insisted. "It's all in your head, babe," I assured her. I made my way down to the basement where the repairman had the furnace slightly apart. "Find anything?" I asked. Everything looks normal to me. And the thermostat is brand new," he returned. He flicked a switch and the heater roared healthily. "Well, thanks anyways for your time," I said sincerely. I walked him to the door, shut and locked it behind him. I made quick loops around the house, making sure all the windows were closed tight, and went to check on Lori. Although consumed in her morning show, she still had that same unsettling look on her face. I went upstairs and began working on a jingle for a local grocery store. Later that night, I indulged in some video games as Lori had picked up an extra late shift. I figured that it's good that she spend some time out of the house. Hearing my stomach angrily growling, I set down the controller and set course for the refrigerator. Ugh, nothing good. We haven't been grocery shopping since last week. Lori calls me the garbage disposal because I can get random eating fits, clearing most of the food in the house in one sitting. I call it the green diet. Hee hee. That's weird. What? I warmed up my car for 5 minutes as I grabbed my leather jacket from the hook and slipped on my shoes. I arrived at the local gas station that serves delicious fried chicken with all the fixings. Grabbed a 99-cent pop from the dispenser before paying for my order. I walked out, almost slipped on a sheet of ice that formed on the yellow painted curb. I played it off cool, hoping no one would notice, and got in my car. I put my food on the passenger seat, lit a cigarette, and began adjusting my mirrors. I pulled my rearview mirror slightly to the left for a better view of the back windshield, while being blinded by 2 spotlights. I put my car in reverse and closely checked my rearview camera for any incoming cars. I got a chill up my spine when I noticed that there was no stoplights behind my car. I looked into the rearview mirror, and my mind turned to mush. My stomach dropped to the floor, and my gaze met a black human-shaped figure staring right back at me, 2 piercing red eyes, a body which looked like melting black candle wax, I was frozen in position. I didn't move or make a sound, just stared. I suddenly felt a light tingling on the back of my neck, terrified. I quickly turned around to see an empty back seat. Nothing. I looked back into the rearview mirror. Nothing. I rubbed my eyes vigorously and made my way back home. Hours later, Lori arrived with my favorite ice cream, with a smile on her face. "I'm sorry for scaring the shit out of you," she apologized. It's okay," I replied. I kept myself from the remainder of the night. I kept to myself for the remainder of the night, trying not to raise a red flag in her head. I confined myself in my studio as I ravagely searched Google for what I had seen. The two red eyes still haunted my thoughts. I kept away from reflections and periodically checked behind me until I felt tired enough to fall asleep once my head hit the pillow. After reading about all these crazy stories about shadow people, I shook my head and chalked it up to lack of sleep. I have been very tired lately, on top of all the scary movies we binge watch every night. Things went back to normal after a week or so. I thought about what I had seen less and less. Lori had seemed to completely forget what she thought she had seen, back to our normal routines. We slowly got used to the new house. For some reason, while sipping my coffee in front of my computer, things seemed off again. I decided to take a quick smoke break and take the dog out for a stroll through our large 1.5-acre backyard. I hit my Marlboro and could feel the warmth of the cherry on my face. Sabbath clumsily played in the snow and chased the sticks I would throw. I entertained him for 10 or 20 minutes and led him back to the back door of the house. I released him from his leash, and he chased one of the cats into the living room out of sight. I filled the animal's bowls with food and water and noticed that the house was silent. Sabbath being a puppy, that's the last thing a puppy owner wants to hear. When we can't hear him, he's usually chewing up a shoe or socks or a remote control. "Sabbath," I called. No pitter-patter of puppy paws could be heard. I quickly started to search for him. I poked my head around the corner and peered into the living room. No puppy to be found. I searched the rest of the ground floor with no luck. The cats lazily laid around the house cleaning themselves, as I made my way to the stairs leading up to the studio. I reached the top steps and saw Sabbath sitting at attention, staring angrily at the closed studio door. Goosebumps seemed to cover my body, head to toe, as I approached him. He continued to snarl and show his teeth to the door. I reached out my hand to pat his head. "What's wrong, boy?" As he suddenly turned his head and bit my fingers. I pulled back my hand and held it in the other, trying to nurse the pain. "Sabbath, what the fuck?" I shouted. He immediately seemed to realize what he had done. He put his ears all the way back and lay down at my feet, looking sorry. I patted his head as he licked the hand he had bitten. I sent him downstairs and slowly opened the door to my studio. I swore to myself that I left it open. As I walked in, fast-paced breath had turned to a visible vapor. It was freezing cold. I stood in the middle of the room and swept from corner to corner with my eyes. I saw nothing. I quickly ran downstairs and hit my bowl to relax a little bit. Things are getting too weird, I thought to myself. I entered my studio to investigate with a clear head. The window was closed and locked. Heat poured through the vents like normal. The temperature returned to normal in just 5 minutes. I was downstairs. In the 5 minutes I was downstairs. I returned to my computer chair and opened Google again. After hours of research, I got a call from Lori at the end of her shift. She seemed deeply betrothed. She said that she would explain once she got home. She pulled in 20 minutes later. I met her at the door with a cup of hot chocolate. We sat down on the bed in our room, and as she began to tell me what was on her mind. I got into my car after work, and as I checked my phone, I saw a reflection of 2 red lights. She said, I began to break into a sweat. My heart beat out of my chest. I tried to remain calm as she continued. I looked into my rearview mirror and saw. She paused for what seemed like a lifetime, and finally described the dark black entity that I had seen 2 weeks ago. I acted as calm as possible and told her, "You were probably just exhausted, babe. I'm sure it was just your mind playing tricks on you." "It wasn't my fucking mind. It was real. You never believe me," she shouted. Catching me off guard, "I'm sorry," I said as I wrapped my arms around her. She buried her face into my shoulder. I could feel the moisture of her tears through my t-shirt. I calmed her and let her under the covers, kissed her forehead, and sat with her until she finally fell asleep. I left to the living room to catch up on The Walking Dead and have a glass of whiskey. 20 minutes later, I paused the show to grab a snack or two out of the fridge. I sat back down, and just before I pressed play on the remote, I heard that what sounded like a slow-motion moan and scratching coming from upstairs. I jumped up, grabbed my shotgun, and ran upstairs. I busted into my studio barrel first, and there, in the far corner of the room, I saw it, a smoky, hunched-over figure with those familiar blood-red illuminated eyes. It had long pointed fingers and toes. It seemed to sway back and forth in a way that looked like it was about to make a move. I pointed my shotgun straight at the figure. "Don't move," I shouted. "I'll blast a hole in your chest," I assured. The creature dropped to all fours and let out a gut-wrenching wail as it darted towards me. I squeezed the trigger as I felt it whoosh right through me, knocking me to the floor. The door slammed shut. I quickly jumped back and tried to open the now seemingly locked door. My heart raced and adrenaline coursed through my veins. As I heard Lori scream, the dog howl, I used the butt of the shotgun to knock the door handle off. I ripped open the door and ran down the stairs. I found Lori backed into the corner of the bedroom with a thick black smog surrounding her. Knowing the gun wouldn't do any good against the creature, I dropped the gun and slowly approached Lori. I reached out my hand, she reached out to mine. I grabbed her hand and pulled her quickly through the smog. I quickly led her back to the back door wow, that was a great sentence, Caitlin. I quickly led her to the back door to escape, and the unlocked door wouldn't open. We both held each other, frozen in our stances. The power in the whole house shut off. She let out a scream that I could still hear to this day. When we heard Sabbath growl, whimper, howl in pain, then silence, I pushed Lori behind me and awaited what seemed like our demise. The next room, slowly illuminated in eerie red light, it seemed to get closer and closer. The lights flickered briefly, and not 10 feet away the creature stood, staring at us. Lori's nails dug into my skin as she wailed, "Jason." The creature then began repeating that disgusting moan. Trapped in darkness, all we could see were those haunting red eyes slowly creeping closer. Suddenly, Lori was able to open the back door. She pulled me out behind her. I caught my breath and called 911. When the officers arrived 15 minutes later, we were in my car with the heat on. They approached slowly with their hands on their unsnapped gun holsters. Sorry, my voice went out there. I slowly exited the car with raised hands. I told them what we had seen in the house, and after a quick chuckle from the two officers, they entered the house. I stayed outside with Lori so she wouldn't be alone. The officers exited the house after a 15-minute investigation without saying much. They told me to put my hands on the front of the cruiser. They thoroughly frisked me and refused to answer as to why, then slapped handcuffs tightly around my wrists. Then finally began to explain what they found. Our 6-month-old puppy Sabbath was found in the hallway, ripped to shreds, his fur and skin completely removed from his body, as if done slowly and carefully. Lori began to heavily tear up in fear. The cop explained that there were scratches all over the walls and in the wooden floors. The other officer took Lori to the side and seemed to interrogate her. After being reassured that I was not a threat, they released me from the cold handcuffs. Lori joined me in front of the police cruiser, and one of the officers pulled something out of his pocket, a Lone Rock arrowhead. Filled his hand. They had found it on the tile floor exactly where the entity stood. The officers called for backup to investigate the scene further. Our house, filled with officers, provided no track of the intruder. They called it. We were transported to a nearby hospital for a checkup. Of course, nothing was wrong. We were left without answers and left with animal cruelty charges. Sorry, messed that up. After arriving at a dirt cheap motel, we immediately called our landlord demanding answers. This seemed to entertain him as I explained what happened. He was of no help and assured me that there was nothing wrong with the house. "Fuck you," I shouted as I hung up the phone. Days later, I left Lori at the motel room to pick up my car. I took an Uber back home. I warmed up the car and reluctantly entered the house to get some necessities. I stepped over Sabbath's shredded body towards the bathroom when I noticed dirt clumped on his little paws. I don't think anything of it. I grabbed a large trash bag and closed his little limp body and proceeded to carry him outside to the woods. I went to the back door to fill a duffel bag and grabbed an old shovel. I walked through the snow-covered grass, back to the little clearing in the woods where I left some. That scared me. Again, sorry the people if you heard that. Someone just yelled and it scared the crap out of me. Anyways, where was I? Back to the little clearing in the woods where I left Sabbath. I broke the cold. What? Oh, wow. Continue reading, Caitlin, Jesus. I broke the cold, hard ground with the shovel and proceeded digging. After a couple minutes of struggling to dig through the hard dirt, heard a ting as my shovel hit something hard. I kneeled down, removed my gloves, and dug out the object with my fingers. An arrowhead? I asked myself, in disbelief. Almost exactly like the one the officer found in the house. I stood up and looked around, trying to figure out where it had come from. When I noticed a little crater on the edge of the brush I had accumulated through the months of yard work. I cleared the snow with my foot to find a hole which looked to have been dug by little puppy paws. In the hole were several arrowheads scattered throughout. I instantly got the chills and made my way back to the car. As I backed out of the driveway, I looked into the living room window and saw those intimidating red eyes staring at me without a body to hold them. They seemed to taunt me. I pulled out my phone to take a picture to prove that what we saw was real. Before I could snap the picture, the eyes disappeared. Obviously, they're not going to freaking stay. That's just a typical horror thing. You can never have proof. The flash went off. I locked my iPhone and put it back into my pocket. I stopped at the corner store to get Lori a bit of comfort food and cigarettes. A mysterious man stopped me in an aisle. "Are you the man who lives in the yellow house with the red porch on Walker Street?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "I'm Marty, a local historian studying northern Ohio," he stated. "I've been searching for a rumored Indian burial site in the area and came across your police reports and public records." With my mouth hanging slightly open, I just stared at him. "Can you show me where everything happened?" he asked. "Go look for yourself. I'm not going back there," I said angrily. I stormed out of the store, back into my car. When I arrived back at the motel, there was Lori, huddled in the corner, rocking back and forth. I immediately ran to her and asked what was wrong. I fell asleep and could see something from outside my body. Could see myself from outside my body. I squeezed her tighter. As I saw her get more emotional, she continued. I heard that moaning sound the red-eyed thing made. She gripped my shirt tightly. It was on top of my body, licking me. She said, Maybe it was a dream? You've been through a lot, I insisted. She pulled down her shirt to reveal a branding-like shape of an arrowhead, a swollen, pus-filled outline on her chest. I quickly grabbed supplies out of the motel first aid kit on the bathroom wall. As I treated her wound, she began to cry. What are we going to do? She asked. We're getting the fuck out of that house, I replied. But it's following us, she stammered. I stroked her temple with my thumb and said, I will figure this out. The next morning I rose from bed, put on my dirty clothes, and jumped in my car. I pulled into the same corner store where the mysterious man had approached me. I walked in, checked every aisle, and finally walked to the counter. The same cashier from the night before greeted me. How may I help you? She asked. Do you know that man I was talking to last night? His name was Marty, I asked. He's that guy from the TV show Ghost Diaries on Channel 8. She then explained she didn't know where to find him. Thanks to the internet, I pulled out my iPhone and found his email within a few minutes. And this is what the email wrote. That's what he wrote. Hello, my name is Jason. We spoke last night at the Speedy Mart on the corner of Northfield Road. I would like to take you to my house and hopefully find some answers. Please get back to me ASAP. Thank you, Jason. Within 5 minutes, he replied. Hi, Jason. I am very glad to hear from you. After much research, I have knowledge that I think you would like to hear. Meet me at your house at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Marty. I arrived 15 minutes early the next day to meet Marty at 9 o'clock on the dot. He pulled into my driveway. He parked and stepped out of his clean black Escalade without taking his eyes off the house. He pushed up his dark black aviator sunglasses and looked at me. Let's begin, he said sternly. I opened the back door. The cats surrounded us, demanding to be fed, and we walked in. As I fed the cats, I let him explore the house. He seemed to say over and over again. Jason, he called. I met him upstairs in my studio. Do you see these scratches here? He asked before I had the chance to say yes. He went on. These aren't just scratches. These are the Indian markings dating around 300 years ago. This house isn't even 100 years old, I stated. Yes, but the ground is built on is, he returned. This area has inhabited by a mass cult-like Indian community, he explained. They believe by animal sacrifice they would summon their gods and absorb certain powers. They dipped arrows in the blood of the animal being sacrificed and cut their wrists vertically with them. The rituals consisted of tribal dances around the one to absorb the god power. Then the chosen Indian would be bled out, and through death be reborn as a god. They described the summoned entities as black humanoid creatures with blood of the sacrificed animals in their eyes. Astonished, I lost my breath. That's exactly what we saw, I exclaimed. Jeez, I can't talk. Sorry. How do we stop it? I asked. Ha ha ha, stop it? He laughed. I'm glad you think our suffering is so fucking funny, I shouted. We only divert it away from you and yours. What? From you and yours? What? Okay, whatever. He said, you are its current host. Somehow the creature has released it and was a release and it latched onto your energy. He explained. Sabbath! I shouted. I explained what I found in the clearing, in the woods. Ah, he said. Take me there, he demanded. We reached the hole that the puppy dug up. As I brushed the snow from the hold again. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Sorry. I was confused at the sight. They're gone? I said. There were around 10 arrowheads buried here. Marty studied the site, and without saying a word, he stared off into the woods. I looked in the same direction to see the creature watching us from a distance. Fuck you, I shouted in anger. At that moment, more creatures started appearing from behind distant trees. There must have been 20 of them, with those same red eyes peering at us. They all had different shapes, like spikes, humps, and one even had a wing, like massive protruding from his back. We heard a crack from a branch and instantly ran for the street. I finally made it to the street where my neighbor shouted, "Are you okay?" Unresponsive, I turned to look, and Marty was nowhere to be found. I slowly peeked around the corner of the house and saw a spot of red snow 10 yards away from the clearing. I called Lori immediately. "Babe, where's that arrowhead the cop found?" "It's here on the table," she replied. His Escalade sat unlocked, blocking my car in the driveway. I opened the driver door and pressed the push to start button. Luckily, the keys were in the cup holder. I put the massive SUV in drive and sped to the motel. I rushed to the door and grabbed the arrowhead without saying a word. As I made my way back to the Cadillac, Cadillac, Lori shouted, "What's wrong?" "What's happening?" "Stay here," I shouted back. I pulled into our driveway 15 minutes after with the arrowhead in hand. I found my old shovel buried in snow where I left it, and made my way to the clearing. There was no sign of Morty, just the blood-stained snow. I entered the clearing, threw the arrowhead back in the hole, and covered it with the dirt that Sabbath had piled up. I then filled the hole where I was burying Sabbath. The overcast covered the sun, and it became oddly dark. Cold sweat dripping down my face, I ran for the opening of the woods. I was stopped in my tracks by all the creatures Morty and I had seen earlier blocking the entrance. "What do you want?" I screamed fiercely. One of the creatures let out a haunting moan. The others followed. They inched closer to me. I backed away slowly until my back was against a white oak tree towering over me. I closed my eyes in fear as they slowly approached me. I opened them and saw all just 1 foot away, surrounding me. I let out an ear-piercing roar, swung my fist with all my might at the creatures. As my fist whooshed through their bodies, they poofed into black smog and then instantly dissipated. I was still alive, shaking. I dropped to my knees, my hands numb, my face red and burning from winter breeze. I lost consciousness. I woke up handcuffed to a hospital bed. A nurse was in the room checking my vitals. "Why am I handcuffed? What's going on?" I shouted with no response. 2 detectives entered the room and asked me my story. I explained to them what had happened. "Stop bullshitting us," one detective shouted. "We want the truth," the other stated angrily. "I told you all I know," I shouted back. "Marty Richards was found dead just yards from you in the woods. No arms, legs, or skin, you sick bastard," he screamed. "And how do you explain your poor girlfriend?" Lori, I screamed. "No, let me the fuck out of here," I shouted at the top of my lungs. She was found at the motel with a slice down her wrist and bled out in the bathtub. The missing arrowheads from Sabbath's dug hole were found at the bottom of the tub where she lied. I've been locked up for 12 years now. I'll never forget her face. The perfect girl and the comfortable life I had was ripped right out of my grasp. I don't sleep much anymore. When I close my eyes, that 1,000-mile stare from those blood-red eyes still stare at me. It stalks me in the darkness. I can still hear its distant moan in the echoes of the cell block at night. I lie and wait for it to make its move. I pray, rather, that it will make its move and end my misery. There is no more fear. There is no more pain. I am just an empty shell awaiting the sweet release of death as I slowly decay in my cell. My mind dwells on the single arrowhead and how such a simple piece of rock could end a happy life. And that's the end of it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of go back and kind of tell my thoughts about this creepypasta. I kind of find it interesting Mind you, this is my first time reading it, so I might say a lot of ums from trying to figure out what I'm going to say. Because I wanted to go into a fresh mind going into this and reading this. I'll try not to say as much. I know I'm really bad at that. I realized that from editing. But anyways, I'm going off topic. What should I say about this? I find it very interesting how the writers started the story with doing kind of like a cute, like, oh, happy family, and then literally 2 minutes later, it's horror and everything possible that could go wrong goes wrong kind of thing. I don't really understand why. The only thing I'm like, about is why was it only in the studio room? Like, why, like, because, that's where that's where all the Indian symbols or Native American symbols were found, and how, like, that's the often place that it was showing up, and how Sabbath was sitting right in front of that room and growling and stuff like that and being angry about it. I just don't understand how something on the second floor can be the main place for all this activity, which is interesting. But I guess actually no. Now that I think about it, it's probably because Marty did say that it was he was like a vessel, or it was attached to him, attached to Jason. So maybe that was the whole reason why it was staying there is because he spent so much time in there. That's where he creates his little jingles and stuff like that, and where he, like I said, where he spends most of his time. So maybe that might be the reason why all the activity was happening there, because the monster, the creature, the black humanoid or whatever it was, the black humanoid creature. I think that's what it was called. Let me just quickly, black humanoid creatures. That's where it first kind of like appeared, like to him. So maybe that's why. I don't know. It was interesting personally. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below on what you guys think about the story. And if you want to do that for all of them, go right ahead. The more feedback, the better. If you have any other, if you also, again, I'm going to be talking about this later, but if you have any feedback or things that you think that I should work on, just leave them in the comments down below. It really helps. I'm starting new at this and stuff like that, so the help really helps. But anyways, what I really like about this story so far, well, after reading it, not so far, is because the thought that always, like, the thing that always interests me with stuff like this is the situation where a paranormal situation happens. Obviously, no one's going to believe you. Police aren't going to believe you until you have evidence. That's really interesting. I like how they use that, which is really cool. And the thing that really interests me, even more than that fact, is even though there was no possible way for him to shred the dog up or skin the guy alive, and there's no possible evidence for him to do such a thing, just because he was there in the area and the police just was like, yeah, it's your fault, now you're in prison. It is really interesting to me personally. I don't know, it could just be weird, but I really like that part for some odd reason, just because that's like a common, in like horror movies and just like horror scary stories in general, or like movies and books and stuff like that. That's like a little thing that if like someone kind of like puts in, I find very interesting. How the person that's experiencing this paranormal experience has nothing to do with it, and they're actually the victim themselves, gets blamed. And maybe if this is a dark humanoid creature and it's evil, I'm obviously guessing because it's killing and sacrificing things, that it wants to see people suffer. I'm probably reading too much into this, but I don't know. I find that little thing interesting. How it literally was like, oh, happy life. Oh wow, this is so great. My life is awesome. I'm with like a girl and I have like my dream and blah blah. Blah. I'm so happy and blah blah. Even though we don't do as much as we should or whatever. How he was so happy in the beginning, and then at the end of the story, it's literally like, my life, I am ready to die. Which maybe that was the whole objective for the black humanoid creature, which would be really interesting if that was. But again, I could be just reading too much into it, probably, like I always do. Anyways, next one. This one is The Blue Boy by Athena Bennett. Alright, so shall we start? Alright. Zoe, come here for a moment, won't you? Shouts the gentle voice of my mother. I pull myself hesitantly away from the picture I have been drawing, in a pale hand resting softly on the banister. I made my way downstairs, footsteps silent. Mama, I call, wondering which room I would find her in. In here, Zoe, she responds from the kitchen, still clutching a red crayon in my right hand. I push open the door to the kitchen. Warm air hit me, bringing with the fresh smell of apple pie and cinnamon. Zoe, honey, this is our new neighbor. He lives just up the road. She introduces me to a boy a little taller than me, clad in blue jeans, blue sneakers, and a blue flannel. Blue, so different from the color red. Crayon. I still clutched. His name is Zane, honey. Won't you introduce yourself? My mother urges, hopefully, that I would soon have better company to keep than my worn teddy bear and a box of crayons. I'm Zoe, I say blankly, locking eyes with Zane. Unsurprisingly, his eyes are blue. He smiles a big smile. He smiles a small smile, holding out a hand just as pale as mine. I stared at it, a thought coming to me just then. How had he gotten here? The nearest vacant house was about a mile away, which did actually make him our closest neighbor, as far as I knew. Though 8 years old. Wow. Though 8 years. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. Knew. Though 8-year-olds didn't walk for miles alone. If I could talk, that'd be great. At least none that I knew, other than Zane. Hesitantly, I placed my hand in his and shake it. His smile seems to grow as I do this, but it still doesn't beat my mother's, which had spread quite so far that I feared her teeth would break. She claps her hands together in a finale I hadn't seen before, and has me sit next to him at the table to eat a slice of pie. Pie I had smelled when I had first come into the kitchen. He eats quietly, which I appreciate. Other boys at my school like to chew with their mouths open, smacking their lips together, and allowing slobber to dribble down their chins. Zane, though, sorry about that, just hiccuped, didn't let any of the disgusting slobber escape his mouth, as he chews with both lips closed, quiet as a bug. You like red? He says, as soon as my mother leaves the room. It was the first time I'd hear him speak. His voice was smooth, one note, smooth as ivory. And you like blue? I replied as we settled back into a comfort silence. When we are done eating, my mother ushers us upstairs, giving me instructions to show this blue-loving boy my toys. I obey, showing him my worn teddy bear, Lancelot, and my favorite box of crayons, and my toy chest of building blocks, and other such toys. I showed him my puzzles, which were missing most of the pieces too. He picks up a blue crayon, and the only crayon in the box that was unused. It was sort of sacred. It was a sort of, oh my god, it was a sort of sacred thing, that blue crayon, for that simple fact that it was perfect, sharp and new. Can I draw? He asks. I nod, and we both settle down in the little plastic chairs that lay pushed against the art table. He picks up a clean white sheet of paper from the stack in the middle of the table, and I take one as well. He draws with blue, I draw with red. Though neither of us said very much, I was content in the fact that Zane had quickly become a friend. I felt sad when it was time for him to go home. I watched out the window as he walks down the road, turning away as he disappears behind the copse of trees at the end of our property. My mother startles me. Her cheerful voice voice loud after the silence that Zane had brought. Oh, I just knew you two would get along, she says happily. I think she was more excited over Zane coming by than I was. To be quite frank, you two are so cute together. What did you draw? She says, picking up the pictures that Zane had drawn with the perfect blue crayon. She smiles in delight at his picture, a drawing of me of me all in blue. I myself had drawn him in red, despite his apparel. Oh, these are so precious. He'll come back tomorrow for sure. And he did. He came back that day, and the day after that, and the day after that. I didn't think I saw his house, or where he came from, as my vision was limited to the pesky trees. It came to a time when he'd earned the privilege of staying the night over. He came that day with a blue overnight bag, wearing blue pajamas that contrasted greatly to my own red pajamas. My mother even took pictures of us standing side by side, arms slung over each other in a chummy way. You two can play outside for a while, but please stay away from the well. We both agreed and went outside. We abided by that one rule for the whole day, and we sat down for supper. Our cheeks were rosy red from the cold, the only red I had ever seen on Zane. We ate greedily, nonetheless, managing to maintain our table manners, and went upstairs to draw for a while before bed. Zane seems frustrated, excited, and can barely sit still at the drawing table. His restlessness affects me as well, and finally I have to ask, why are you so jumpy? I want to see the well, Zoe. I blink in confusion. Why? I ask. Because it'll be exciting. It'll be very exciting, wouldn't it? His smile is infectious, soothing away my worries, and soon we are on the stairs and out the door. The cold grass tickles the soles of my feet, and our faces turn red once more. This does not stale our journey to the well, though, because we are young and excited. In those few rebellious moments, we are invincible. Zane puts a finger to his lips, smiling. Tonight we see the black water of the well in her full glory. She'll reflect the very sky we stand under, he says grandly. I stare at the well, which I had never really paid attention to in the past years, for the simple fact that my mother had forbidden it. Do you push it or pull it? I mutter, referring to the wooden cover that concealed the inside of the well from view. We push it. Both of us lay our pale palms on the cold wooden cover and push it with all the strength until the cover gives, and we are given a clear view of the well's dark water. Zane pulls himself up on the edge of the stone well and begins walking around the rim quickly, gloating. I am the king, the king of the well, he sings. King of the well, and I'm never going to fall. He holds out his hands and I take it as he helps me up on to the edge of the well. Here's my queen. She's queen of the well, queen of the well, queen of the well. We rule the well. We rule the well. We rule the well, and we're never gonna fall, he sings. I smile, gaining confidence and step as we dance around the well. He repeats the tune. I am the king of the well, the king of the well, the king of the well. I'm never gonna fall. Ah, he says, releasing my hand as he teeters, attempting to gain balance. He does, and we continue our dance around the well. I go a bit more carefully, but he is intent upon proving to the queen that he is truly the king of the well. I am the king, the king of the well, the king of the well, the king of the well, and I'm never going to fall. Here's my queen. She is the queen of the well, the queen of the well, we rule the well. We rule the well. We rule the well, and we're never gonna. He totters dangerously, once again releasing my hand. His eyes widen, and I let out a small scream of fear at this time. He fails to regain balance. He locks eyes with me, ice blue meeting red-brown, and he whispers the last words of that song he had created. Fall. And the king of the well falls, leaving the queen standing, shocked and afraid, and even a little heartbroken. A scream rips through my throat as I reach for him, desperately clasping at his fingers. Zane! Zane! I screech, desperately as his fingers pull away. The dark of the well, dragging him further and further away. His terrified screams digging into my heart as they fade into the depths of the well we were supposed to be ruling. My mother must have heard us. For one moment I am alone. The next, she is pulling my terrified self away from the well that my best friend had just disappeared into. Where's Zane, Zoe? Where's Zane? She says, shaking me as I babble incoherently. I finally managed to piece together a sentence. The blue king fell, I say. Then again, I repeat it. Mama, the blue king fell. Her eyes widen in horror. The police are called. It takes days to retrieve Zane's body from the well. When I see his body, I laugh. I laugh at the cruel irony given by the sight of the boy who had been blue, and almost every day his skin was blue now too. Well then, okay, that was really morbid and kind of cute at the same time. Okay, so Zoe is probably going to be messed up for the rest of her life from seeing one of her friends falling into a well and seeing his dead body afterwards. I find it interesting. At first, when I was reading this, because again, this is my first time reading it and reading it with you guys, I thought that Zane was a ghost, possibly. Because, kind of seemed like that after her saying no 8-year-old kid would walk miles alone and stuff like that. But, and then for her to see his dead body in the wall, or maybe he's been down there for a very long time and that was just his ghost or something. It's a very interesting story in that sense, where it could be either one. But I'm kind of more leaning towards that the kid was a ghost, and he was just trying to get someone to find his body so he can finally rest in peace. Hopefully, because that'd be really interesting. Or the fact that he was. Because I don't think, it wouldn't take that long for his body, if it was that long, like it was a short amount of time, his body wouldn't be blue, I don't think. I don't know. It's a very interesting story. I liked it. I just find it interesting, the whole contrast of the red and the blue, how it's warm and alive and versus dead and decay, which is interesting. That's my personal sense of it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It was really interesting. I always like, and it might sound really weird and creepy, but I always like horror stories or creepypastas with kids involved, because it just makes that 10 times even more creepier, because kids are usually the innocent and delicate little human beings and stuff like that. So I don't know. I kind of liked it. It turned out a lot different than I was thinking it was gonna be in that sense. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments of this one as well. And we'll go on to the next one. And then this probably might be the last one for today for this podcast, and then I'll start talking about what I've been thinking about and stuff like that about this podcast and what the future might entail and all that stuff. Well, anyways, the next one is Sleep You by Fade. So I'm about to tell you, awake you, I presume. Something that sounds truly unbelievable. You're probably wondering why I made the distinction of saying awake you. Yeah, I literally just said what. Well, that's what I want to explain to you. There are two distinct beings that reside in your mind. One more active during your wake times, and the other during your slumber, i.e. awake you and asleep you. I know, not very creative names, but this isn't a story of some old folklore with clever names for creatures of the unknown. This is solid fact, which I'll repeat will sound unbelievable. Let me start with some history. I did some research, and it seems to be that at a certain point, the human evolution, we didn't sleep much. Being the weak and powerless species we are, it's not hard to see why why very little sleep would be beneficial to primitive man. I mean, even with our intellect, we would be decimated by other predators in ancient Africa. We were basically the nerds of the savannah. The last time I checked, nerds don't really have a good time surviving with bigger playmates, air quotes. Maybe our reduced sleep time was the reason we survived, and our close relatives, the Neanderthals, wow, that was horrible from my part, anyways, weren't so lucky. Just some food for thought. My guess is that different sections of the mind were activated for sleep and awake hours. The sleep you nearly having as much control of your body as awake you had, allowing your swift escapes from hungry predators that just happened to stumble across a field of slumbering and unsuspecting humans. I guess at a point further down the line, perhaps during the rise of agriculture and as humans started to settle down and build shelters, this form of bicameralism? I am so sorry, I don't know what that word is. Became somewhat obsolete. And sleep you would be redundant in a way. Eventually, I assume it became kind of weird and unsightly seeing people roam around and aimlessly at night. And as the church and other monarchs, wow, what was that word? Monocrats? Wow, Kaylin, that was great. And other monarchs rose to power. It didn't take long for the guillotine happy individuals to call anyone who partook in this phenomenon of a heretic, a witch, or straight up demon sent by Lucifer himself, extinguishing them, which were likely the last remaining humans with an active sleep counterpart, leaving the sleep counterpart trapped within the mind. The thing about the mind, which is sleep use plane of reality, is that it's a hellish and chaotic landscape filled with anything your mind conjures up, and as it explodes during the wake hours. You see sleep use plane of existence is completely based on what seeps into awake use mind. a sort of subsection of the true universe that receives, oh my god, I can't read today, that receives information through awake you's experiences through the day. Things entering this plane are rarely ever in their true and pure form. The scenery is distorted and beings contorted. Oh my god, I can't read. I am so sorry, guys. I am so sorry. The fact that its true universe is truly mainly materialistic, but your mind is another story entirely. The mind is capable of creating the worst. Did I literally just read that? Wow, what the fuck? The mind is capable of creating the worst scenarios and the most disturbing scenes that could never exist in the true universe. To think of what goes through the mind of a perverted child necrophiliac, replaying the sounds of his victims crying constantly in his mind alone, alongside the horrific visuals of him defying their dead bodies. No sentient being would be forced to live through such an environment. You could take this little piece of cautionary tale telling you to be more considerate when you think. But that's not the reason I'm writing this piece. This is more of a warning message, or at least a heads up, because frankly, I doubt there's anything anyone can do about what I'm going to explain. As you can probably tell, if Sleep You could find a way to somehow exist in the true universe, it would take the opportunity immediately. You can't really blame Sleep You for wanting to exist in the true universe. I mean, if you knew from the moment of your conception that you were living in a fraction of reality, wouldn't you want to experience the bigger picture? The bigger truth? You may say no now, but I assure you after a while you would die for a moment out in the sun, metaphorically of course. Now, what if I tell you there's a way for Sleep You to be, quote, unquote, free? You're probably wondering how I would, if such a thing is possible. This is not a major importance at the moment. And besides, you need more information to fully grasp how I do. Again, what I'm about to say does sound unbelievable, but I'm still sharing it with you either way. The only way for Sleep You to experience the universe is for you, awake you, to switch positions with Sleep You. I assume it has something to do with the law of physics or something. Two sides of the same coin couldn't be at the same time, or something like that. Anyways, there's only one way that I know Sleep You can accomplish this, which is by getting awake you to sleep in Sleep You's reality permanently. When Sleep You sleep, oh my gosh, when you sleep You gets a bit more control over their reality. Just before REM sleep, the sleep period where most of your dreams occur begins, your brain kicks into hyperdrive. This is Sleep You getting ready for your visit by organizing and fixing up their realm in hopes that one day you will be trapped there permanently, even after this simulation is shut down. There are 3 types of scenario templates I believe that are most effective that Sleep You may try to use in attempting to switch places with Awake You. All a bit flawed in one way or the other, the first scenario being what you likely call a nightmare. This is Sleep You trying to use your fears to cause you to retreat into the darkest corners of your mind, traumatized and unable to awake. This is a more crueler way of achieving their end. But is only one really done when Sleep You has already been traumatized by what you Awake You allowed sleep into your mind during the day. A kind of karma treatment, I suppose. This scenario's fatal flaw spawns from the fact that deep down you know the monsters and entities you fear are simply not possible. Any occurrence of these creatures would wake up even the dumbest of people, while after a while of exposure to them. The second scenario is more positive, but still quite disturbing attempt by Sleep You to keep you awake you in their realm. In this scenario, Sleep You attempts to make you a sort of paradise consisting of your deepest desires, fulfilled hopes and dreams, all to achieve its goal to get you to stay forever and steal your life. A sort of siren call if you think about it. This scenario's flaw is similar to the first scenario's, which is that it is very prone to being caught out as a dream. Not even the most optimistic people would be gullible enough to believe everything just happens to go perfectly their way, which again leads to the failure of the goal Sleep You tries to attain. The last scenario Sleep You attempts is hands down my favorite, mainly because its simplicity, but also because it is most effective in your perspective at least. In this scenario, Sleep You simply attempts to mimic the true universe in your dream, making you none the wiser. This would have been a truly diabolical and foolproof true universe in your proof attempt, if not for its hilarity. You see, as I said above, Sleep You is only limited to what seeps into Awake You's mind, and most of what reaches Sleep You's plane of reality is really ever in its pure and ideal form. This is a huge blow to Sleep You's attempt. Having never experienced the true universe makes it quite difficult to grasp what it is, and isn't possible. This is likely why you tend to have doors that are meant to lead to somewhere else entirely in dreams. Due to Sleep You's lack of understanding of true universe, Sleep You may incorporate fictional characters and events that you, Awake You, may have encountered through fictional media, such as comic books and movies, and tries to pass off the events as normal and casual. Sometimes even making the dream look like a scenario one unknowingly. The only one for Sleep You to overcome this obstacle is through trial and error. Sleep You could also be abided by having an Awake You that doesn't really partake in fictional media. You can only imagine how much easier it would be for Sleep You to have an successful attempt with this reality-free of abnormal creatures and monsters, a realm free of anomalies. Wow, I don't know. I'm tired. Oh gosh. The true universe without even trying too hard to mimic it. So now you know all this, and if you're curious, so now you know all this, and if you're a curious and attentive fellow, you probably still have it at the front of your mind. I haven't told you how I know all this. I wish I didn't have to give up the cliche ending, but as you would have guessed, reading this far into it, what you likely want to think is a tale. I didn't get this information from a secondary source. You may likely like to refer to me as Sleep Me, as calling me Awake Me may just cause confusion. The true Awake Me has gone for a long nap. You're probably also wondering why I don't have an issue with you reading this tale. Well, it's simply because, like I said at the beginning, you will never believe this even after I say. It is simply just too unbelievable. Awake Me was also similarly skeptical. Above all, I have to get this message across to Sleep You somehow. Which better way to accomplish this than to have you read, ensuring my words slowly but surely seep into your mind and into Sleep You's reality. Sleep You gradually getting better at understanding how this world works with every syllable you read. For those of you who believe for one reason or the other, you may like to think you're safe. but I can assure you your faith is just as doomed as any skeptic reading this. You may try not to sleep, but eventually, like the human being you are, sleep will get the better of you. And just as quick as your consciousness leaves this universe, I shall emerge in sleep use where sleep you can use what you've read told against you. I already assembled a few of us in this end of this year. I truly feel bad for you, your kind, awake yous, that is. But it's simply a case of survival of the fittest. Sweet dreams. Oh, and don't worry, we'll leave your motor functions at night. That's interesting. I like how it's placed as trying to be like a fact, and how it's like trying to be like, oh yeah, this is totally true, and this is a thing that actually happens. And I'm like, this is interesting. I like the whole factor that the sleep you term is different than you. I don't know. It's weird and interesting. I liked it. It's, again, if you guys want to leave your comments on these stories in the comments down below, or just talk to me about it in person, feel free. This is very interesting. I find it obviously weird, but also interesting at the same time, obviously. It was kind of, I liked how they had different scenarios on how you can obtain sleep you and how sleep you can control you. And the last part is kind of interesting, how it says even if you're skeptical, this is still gonna try to help sleep you get out, kind of thing, which is really interesting, which kind of makes you fear and wonder if this is actually true, and what will happen when sleep you takes over, which is interesting. It kind of seems like it's supposed to be trying to be a brainwashing tactic or something, but I don't know. It was cool. It's different. It's a lot different than normal. I don't like the creepypasta where it's just ooh, blood got scored, blah, blah, scary, boo, ah. I like one that's different. You don't see, and it's introducing you to something new kind of thing. I don't know. I'm weird like that. Anyways, so let's go back to what I was going to say and talk about my thoughts on the podcast so far. Alright, so I personally am liking how this is turning out so far. Obviously, it's a work in progress. This is literally my 4th podcast. Also, I'd like to apologize since last week. I don't know if anyone noticed. Last week I didn't post a podcast because I was going to post it on Thursday, or record it on Thursday, because Friday my boyfriend and I went out to a movie date, and I just didn't want to record it, and didn't want to have to feel rushed, and I just wanted to enjoy my night with my boyfriend. And so I was going to film it Thursday, but I was just not feeling it. I had a really bad day that day, and I just wanted to go home and hide and watch anime for the rest of the day. So that's why I didn't post the podcast last week. I was originally going to do this last week, but just wasn't feeling up to it. I've had a lot of feedback, really good feedback so far. Some things that I want to do in the future, which I'm still kind of working on, is I want to make an intro, an actual intro for it. I just haven't had any good ideas, because I don't want to just create an intro for the sake of creating an intro. I want it to fit my podcast and me actually enjoy it, because it's going to be in front of my podcast for the remainder of my podcast until I change it, probably. I don't know. So, I don't know. what I'm going to do for that yet. I still have to figure out what I want to do for it and, like, pick out something that's going to be cool and interesting and fit with the podcast, like I just said. And another thing I want to start doing, instead of having, like, podcast 1 and podcast 2 and podcast 3, one of my coworkers suggested that I come up with, like, catchy titles for them, which I really want to do. Again, just trying to think of catchy titles and stuff like that. I'm already working a lot as it is, and my brain's fried. So hopefully soon I'll think of some catchy titles for the podcast, but right now it's just going to be podcast 1, podcast 2, blah, blah, blah. I know it's boring, not exciting, but I'll eventually get it. Interesting titles. Oh, another thing that I'm currently working on and I'm trying to figure out is, obviously I'm not that tech savvy. I'm obviously new to this, so I don't my podcast isn't the best audio quality. I'm aware of that. You have to, like, literally put it up top volume or listen to it with headphones. I still need to figure out an actual program, because this program that I'm using right now, it's called Studio One. I think it's just for recording music or something, because whenever I record podcasts, it likes to not work for some odd reason, or it sounds perfectly fine on the Studio One, and then as soon as I import it, I have to, it, like, starts clipping stuff. It's a lot of a headache, and I don't know, I just need to find a different program or something, or I might even, I was thinking today, I might even do these live, find an outlet to do these live, so that way it kind of helps save the effort of editing, and you guys we can do like a comment section or something. I don't know, I'm still thinking. It's still a work in progress, and like I said, I'm still a newbie at this. This is my 4th podcast and stuff like that, so a lot of learning to do, a lot of growing. But I really enjoy these. I like bringing people on, and I have a lot of critiques for myself personally, like, I need to stop saying but that comes from my social anxiety and social notness. I just can't, I have a problem talking in general. So I need to work on that, and that was a big reason why I started doing this podcast, is so I can work on that and work on my my social anxiety and stuff like that, and hopefully this will help, talking about something that I actually enjoy, talking to my friends about the stuff that I enjoy and stuff like that, and the stuff that they enjoy. And so yeah, hopefully that will help. Another thing that I want to kind of start, like, another critique for myself, is that whenever me and my guest and I, are talking about something, and we go off topic, and I always point it out, and I don't know why, and it's very frustrating myself, because I'm just like, I tell myself, don't point out that we're going off topic. It's the whole point of the podcast. We're supposed to go off topic, we're supposed to talk, we're supposed to do whatever we want. And I always go say that. And I'm like, stop. Like, what are you doing? Like, stop. Oh my god. I just need to work on that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff I need to work on too. Like, again, like I said, audio files and all that stuff. And I want to add some more pictures or something. I think I might go with the live thing. I don't know. Like I said, it's still a work in progress. I really enjoy this, so. Anyways, that was like my little spiel on what I'm going to be doing for now. Oh, sorry, one last thing. I've also, the reasoning why I wanted to do, like, a personal, like, just me podcast today, another reason, is I enjoy listening to people read stories. That's just, like, my personal entertainment. If you don't like it, then don't listen to it. Listen to the next podcast or something. I don't know. I'm just making, this podcast is personally for me, because I like listening to these. Just, like, I'll edit them, listen to myself, like, thousands times, which is really annoying. And then I'll just take a week and then I'll listen to it. Because I find this is like, I'm creating this for the sake of me. Like, I'm creating this because I enjoy this type of entertainment. And that might be it's not for everyone. I'm aware of that. Like, not a lot of people like hearing people read stories, and especially how I can't read properly, apparently, because of my social anxiety. But I don't care. I personally, if I'm listening to someone that's stuttering and messing up their words, I sympathize with them. I'd be like, hey, this person is enjoying themselves. This person is going out of their way to make them uncomfortable to read something that they enjoy and that they want to share with the world. And hey, who cares? They're enjoying themselves. Don't be rude to them. There's always haters. But like, give them a break. For example, for me, like, I'm aware that I stutter and I can't speak. I literally pointed out the entire story, all the stories. Anyways, I'm just ranting now. So anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Again, if you don't like this stuff, whatever, I'm making it for me. Anyways, really hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did listen to it and you're still listening to me ramble on. If you made it this far, you're awesome. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it if you made it this far of me rambling. But anyways, alright, I'll see you guys next week. And I'll see you, bye.